There is comfort in repetitive movement. A yogi would say, I am practicing yoga. Perfection is never the goal. The process and what we learn about ourselves along the way is what matters. Stitching is like that. We carefully select our fabric, choose just the right floss, and we gather our tools, the scissors and needles. Then we take a seat in our favorite chair and begin to stitch. The needle goes into the fabric and comes back out. It goes in and comes back out. Stitch by stitch, we make beauty and find comfort as we stitch. We're just going to sit here for a minute and talk to the FlossTube friends. You want to say hi to them, Arch? There, you're going to say hi. Wait, you need to say hi and let them see your hands on face. There you go. Hi, FlossTube friends. I'm Jackie. This is Archie. Welcome to Comfort Stitching. How are you? Nice to see you guys. I know it's been an extra week since I was been here, so it's been 4 weeks. And some things have been going on, which I'll talk about. But today is August 30th, 2025. It's a beautiful Saturday here in Weston, Missouri, where I live. You'll probably hear some street sounds today because I live downtown, and there is a train that you might hear once or twice go through town. Not a lot I can do about all that. It's a price I pay for living on Main Street in a cute town. So anyway, welcome. Welcome, welcome. It's nice to see everybody. If this is your first time here today, special welcome to you. And for those of you who are coming back, thank you. Thank you so much. It's just such a joy for me to do this and to know that so many of you are receiving joy and pleasure from the things that I have to share, and comfort, so you say. So I really do appreciate those of you who return and who like, comment, and subscribe to the video. Thank you. This is episode 21 of Comfort Stitching. If you're new here, this is a channel all about cross stitching and sometimes the other things that I get up to and the other things that I make. And obviously my Scottish Terrier, that was Archie. He is a little over 9 years old, and he is a brindle colored Scottie. So some of that gray you saw, he is natural in his coat, but some of it is because of his age too. Like everybody, he is acquiring a little bit of gray as he ages. So I don't know about where you live, but here in Missouri, the weather we have been having lately has been perfect as far as I'm concerned. We've had days that have been in the low 80s, I'm going to say. The humidity has finally decided to get out of here. There was one night this week, or I should say morning, because I get up fairly early to get ready for work, but one day this week, it was in the upper 50s when I took Archie out to walk. So it's jacket weather in the morning, which I love. This is just coming into my favorite time of year. This weekend here in the United States is kind of the last hurrah for holiday weekends. A lot of the schools started this past week, so kids are going back to school. And this is called Labor Day, so Monday is a holiday. And some people choose to use it to like do one last little family vacation for the year. Kind of the unofficial closure of summer, and then moving on into the fall season. As I've said repeatedly, my favorite time of year. I would love it when the leaves start to turn. I mean, if you look around me, just the bit of my apartment that you can see behind me, the colors you can see are all my favorites and all kind of fall and very earthy colors. So this is my favorite time. So really the reason that I'm a week later than usual coming to you is because last weekend I was hosting, along with my friends Fred and Gretchen, who are the owners of a shop here in Weston called Florilegium. We were hosting a gathering, a day-long gathering last Saturday. I call it a Stitch with Me, but if you're there, it's And if you said stitch with me, I was stitching with you. So it was the third one of these events that we've held here. And oh my gosh, such a good time. Such a really good time. We had an all-day event this time. This is the first time I've done all day, or we have done all day. In the past, I've kind of tried to respect, if you will, the posted shop hours for the store Florilegium, and that's from 1 to 5. So in the past, we did just an afternoon. But this time we decided to go all day. Fred and Gretchen opened the shop. They were here at 9 o'clock in the morning, unlocking the doors. We had people here right not long after that. I arrived at about 9:30, and there were people in the store already staking out their places that they wanted to sit and starting to shop. Oh gosh, such a good time. It was another gorgeous day. That day we'd had a little rain in the morning, but it turned sunny, and people had an opportunity to go out to lunch, just shop around. We had just sun streaming in the windows of the 2 rooms we were stitching in. There were 25 people that came. I can fit 25 in the room, so I guess with me it was 25, but I can fit 25 guests plus me. We did have a couple of last minute cancellations, and I reached out to the people I had on the wait list. Some of you were able to come. I'm so glad. And we just had such a great time. I will have pictures at the end of the video today of some of the stitching. I had asked people to bring some finished objects, and we had those set up in a different room of Florilegium where they were on display, and everybody could kind of wander in there and look at the beautiful work as they wanted to. It was, oh gosh, we had some gorgeous, gorgeous work. Amazing. A couple of samplers that were there. I had a couple of my things that were there. People brought everything from strawberries to smalls to framed pieces. Just some beautiful work that was so inspiring. I really appreciate those of you who came and brought your things, that you did bring them, because seeing what everybody else is working on, I mean, sometimes you see stuff that you've never seen before, and I definitely saw that there. But sometimes you're thinking, oh, I forgot about that chart, or oh, I didn't know about that chart, or I've seen that and never seen it finished before. It was just so inspiring to see what everybody was working on. One of the great things too about the get together was that, as I said, this was the third one that I've done. This was just an idea I had to kind of like just create a place for people who are in the Kansas City area, which I just live north of. There's not a place that people in the northern part of Kansas City get together to stitch. I was just trying to pull something together for more local people. And I did have some Kansas City people who were there stitching, but I had no idea that people might want to come from miles around to join me for the day and join everybody else for the day. But some of the folks who came last Saturday had been to either the other 2 or at least one other of these stitch gatherings. About half of them, I would say, had been here before. And so they had already met each other and had started to form some relationships. So that was nice that they got to continue those. And then we had a little over half or so of the people who were here who had never met each other before and were here for the first time and got to experience Florilegium and just begin some new friendships too. Just so wonderful, so wonderful. So thank you to everyone who came, who went out of your way to come. I had no idea it was going to be such a fun event. The community that and friendships that it would cultivate and foster, and I look forward to many of those again in the future. I'm hoping we can do one more before the year is out. I can't guarantee it. Once we hit October here in Weston, there is festival after gathering after event nearly every weekend between the first weekend in October through Christmas. So, and why that impacts kind of the date that I might choose is just there's a limited number of parking spots in town and things to, or places to eat and that kind of stuff. So it just becomes a little bit inconvenient to add yet another thing. And I don't want it in any way for these events to inconvenience you guys who are making the effort to come here. I want to make sure you have a great experience. So if I can find a weekend before the snow flies, because I do have to take into consideration what bad weather could do to people who might be traveling. So I'll work on that. If I come up with something, I'll announce it here or on my Instagram page. So if you're not following me on Instagram, I just would encourage you to, not because I need followers, but I announce some of these things there, sometimes first because it's quick and easy for me. And if I'm announcing something, it might happen like between videos and I don't want you to miss out. So I would encourage you to follow my Instagram page. And I always have links to that information in the description box below this video. So that all will be there. And that reminds me too, I've had a few more people than usual reaching out to me on Facebook and wanting me to friend them on Facebook. And I've had to kind of set a boundary around that. So if you're one of those people who has reached out to me on Facebook wanting to friend me and I haven't, it's really because I try and keep that for family and friends that I've known for a long time. So it's not that I don't want more friends, but again, I do try and keep that a little more private. So I'm not trying to, pass any judgments or anything like that or ignoring you. It's just that I've had to set a little bit of a boundary around at least one part of my life. So I hope you understand that. But I'm happy to have you follow along on Instagram. You're going to see more there anyway, because I don't post a lot to Facebook. I'm on that mostly so I can participate in some groups and get the information that might be shared in some of the groups. So with that said, let's talk about some of the things that we're going to talk about today besides the stitch gathering. I was given a lot of really cool gifts at the stitch gathering, little things, and I've had a couple of things of Stitchy Kindness come my way. I'll show that to you a little later in the video because I know some of you don't really care, not into seeing that. So we're going to see that later. And I'm just looking at my notes to make sure that I'm not missing anything here. I have a finish to show you, a very exciting one, which is a sampler that I had been working on called Rachel De la Mare. And the reason I'm even telling you what it is this early in the video is because a lot of you have asked me about the color conversion that I did for my sampler. So I'm going to talk about that today. So I'm hoping that I'll have some beyond showing you the actual sampler. I've made some notes. I'm going to have some screenshots or some things to hold up that you might want to screenshot. You might want to take notes. I am going to post some of this to Instagram again later for those of you who have been waiting to get that conversion. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit as we go. And again, I don't know, it might get dry for some of you who aren't into that kind of thing. So I'm just giving you a pre-warn. Get prepared with a notebook and pen, or hopefully you'll just listen. Maybe it'll be the kind of thing just enjoy listening to me talk about. So I've got that, and I have one thing that I've been working on to share with you, some progress, and another thing that I made while we haven't seen that's not cross stitch, but I hope you'll find to be fun. And I just realized I'm seeing the top of my shirt here. I wanted to show you. This is what I got for the stitch gathering. Stituation. I saw this. I'm going to read it to you. Chris, the camping stitcher, I saw this on her Instagram, and I had to get one right away. It says, Stituation, the state of being completely engrossed in a cross-stitch project, blissfully unaware of the outside world. See also mental break, cognitive respite, stress getaway. So perfect, right? We all have our, hopefully you have an opportunity to stitch, if not daily, at least a few times a week. And we all want to have that opportunity to be in a cross-stitch situation. It was from an Etsy seller called the FeatherpopShop, if you're at all interested. So that is that. Just getting rid of a few notes as I go along so I don't have to wade through these again. So let's talk about some stitching. Like I said, I have a whip to show you. Whips have been minimal since we've seen each other last because I spent so much time with the Julia sampler. I really wanted to have that done so I could share the color conversion with you all today. And I felt like the color conversion would make more sense if she was done. So we will have that, but I worked on this Quaker sampler called Ragamuffin 2 by Shakespeare's Peddler. This is what that looks like. This one I've been working on for a little while. Let me show you the threads. I'm doing my own color conversion on this one, but these are based on the called for threads. I just kind of pulled some color and cotton colors. I also had access through my sister who bought this chart at Country Sampler up in Spring Green, Wisconsin. I had access to a color conversion that they did, so this is kind of also based on theirs. But then I've added some things of my own too. So let me show you that. I'm working in the upper part of it. Here's what I've got. This is being stitched on 40 count. Picture this plus linen in a color called vellum. And the last time we were together, I had maybe about this much done. Just the upper left, and I had started on the alphabets. And this is what I chose to work on at the Stitch With Me gathering, which is kind of a funny story. And so I've gotten some of those alphabets to my left, your right, done, and some of that top border. So the funny story is I was working on the alphabets at the Stitch With Me gathering, and I ended up having to frog everything that I put in. And it's not necessarily the fault of stitching something like this, not being able to count at a retreat. I actually had a mistake in it that was in there before the stitch gathering. It was in that C. I had it off by a couple of stitches, and I had started to measure the next row of the stitching based on that. And of course it wasn't going to line up. And then I felt like anything that I might do afterwards, I mean, I could have left it, but anything that I might do afterwards, I was always going to have to remember that everything was off. And I just felt like this early in the stitching process, I didn't want to have to remember that it was all off. So really the only things I had to take out were several alphabet letters, but it was worth it to me to get it back on track so that when I do the rest of the sampler, I will have everything in the right places. I continue to really enjoy this one. There's, to me, and I know we all receive different things from our stitching, but this border, just so simple, you do have to really count it. If you have this in your stash and haven't done it yet, you have to be careful with your counting in the border because it's not even. And then, of course, in everything else. But there's a quietness about this sampler that I'm already getting from it that I just really appreciate. So I'm enjoying it a lot. As I said, this is Picture This Plus 40 count. The color is called Vellum. And I'm using 1 floss strand over 2 linen threads. I started this at the end of July, so I haven't been working on it all that long, just fitting it in between, excuse me, stitching sessions with Julia. And I'll probably work on it more now that Julia is finished. The one thing I wanted to talk about too, as I show you this one, I had mentioned that I was going to use an old DMC color that I had been using in the Rachel De la Mare sampler. And I wasn't sure I was going to have enough in this. And it's kind of this peachy rose color. And mine was an old one that I'd probably had ever since I started stitching back in the late 80s. And I had several people, you guys, so nice, several people reach out to me and say, I have some. I'd love to send you some. A couple of people in the Zoom stitch group that I do on Monday nights. So I have multiple skeins of DMC 950. And of all of these, there really is only one that matches the one I had. I had no idea DMC dye lots would change that much. I guess I just think of DMC as being consistent and tried and true, but boy, has this color 950 changed since the late 80s. It's become a lot more of a kind of a clean peachy color, and the one I had was kind of a peachy pinky brown almost. It has some brown in it. So anyway, needless to say, I have plenty of floss to be able to now feel comfortable using this floss in my Ragamuffin sampler. And I don't know how much of it is going to get in here. I do know that there are some berries that go along with these mustard yellow ones that I think I'm going to put that pink there. And some of the other motifs that are in this sampler, there's a lot of ghosting that goes on in this, and I want to make sure I can see those motifs, so I might change that. And I think pink will be a good complement in here because there's actually some red that shows up, and I think it would be nice to have a version of red that shows up somewhere else in the sampler besides in here. So that's going to be a change I make. And because so many of you shared that pink with me, what I've decided to do is take a little strand off of each of the skeins that I got and try and work it into this sampler. So those of you who sent me some, you're all going to be in this sampler too. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Your generosity never ceases to amaze me. And I appreciate your sharing. And I'm going to be happy now to add that color into the sampler with confidence that I won't run out. And it'll be so nice to know that I'm putting something of each of you guys into this sampler too. So that is Ragamuffin 2 by Shakespeare's Peddler. That one's been out for a while, so it's pretty easy to find. Shakespeare's Peddler is also Teresa Vinette, also known as Kitten Stitcher. You can definitely get that on her website, I know, and a lot of other places too have it available online. So another thing that I did since I saw you last is for the Stitch With Me days, I have gotten to where I try and have a little table gift for everybody that comes. For those of you who come, I know you've told me it's not necessary, but I like to. And The first time, I think I just had some candy. The second time, I had a friend of mine who makes and sells votive candles. She made some special candles for us. And this time I decided I had the motivation to make some strawberries. So, excuse me, I have a little tickle in my throat today. I made little velvet pin strawberries for everybody. And I've got, these were the extras. I made more than I needed, so you can see them here. They were just some overdyed wool that I had with that crinkly ribbon on the top. And then I put beads for the seeds. Now I did have, besides all y'all who came, I made one of these for my stitchy box. I wanted to make one for my tartan stitching box that I've been working on. So these were a lot of fun, but to make 28 of them, I think, it took me the better part of a week, maybe a couple of days extra. So in the time that I've seen you, I've gotten no more stitching done than I usually do because that extra week I was making strawberries. These were a lot of fun though. I would guess they are about not quite 2 inches, and I stuffed them with walnut shells. So they're pretty firmly stuffed and they're fun. So if you've never made these before, they actually do work up kind of quickly, but when you're making that many of them, it wasn't obviously so quick. And I do still work too, so I was just working on them in the evenings. The other thing that I gave everybody were some of these Saju thread winders. That's what they are. And I've got extras, obviously. So, and there was a motivation for me getting these too. I found a place online that I could get a selection, just like a variety pack of these. The shop is called Brooklyn Haberdashery, and they had just, I got a grab bag of Saju thread winders. Oh, they, you know, they have this great old labeling on them. This one's really fun. And, oh, I love this guy. This funky guy here. Anyway, I had been looking at Saju thread winders, and there are some tartan ones, and my bag had 3 of them in them. So I'm not so altruistic that I gave these away to anybody. These are for me. They're going to go in my tartan stitching box. So those were fun. The making the strawberries. I hadn't made one before. Everybody loves a strawberry. And then those thread winders are fun too. I've seen those, and I know the Saju company has been around for quite a long time. And so there's a lot of really great vintage advertising that they have on their products. I know they sell thread and stuff too, but there's a lot of great accoutrement that you can get from them to add to your stitchy box, the notions that you might want to use and just have fun with Saju. So I'm just moving some things around because we're going to have the big reveal now. The finish of Julia Rachel De la Mare. Let me show you the chart first. This is a sampler from Kathleen Littleton of Cross Stitch Antiques. This is the antique that's on the cover of this. Now I got this last year, probably just about a little over a year ago. It was part of a club that Country Sampler had called the Threads of History Club. Not a member of the club, but once they send out all of the kits for their club members, they usually have extras, and they will sell them to the general public. I saw this in a newsletter that I get from Country Sampler, and it was just one that I knew when I saw it. I got to stitch that, and so I got the kit that they sent with me. And it ended up that I began this sampler last year at the end of September as a birthday start. So the one you're going to see, I have not been stitching since my birthday. There's a story, which I'll tell, but if you're been following along, you know it. If you're new here today, here's Julia. I'm just going to move it around a little bit. I'm behind her, so I can't see what you're seeing. I'm hoping you can see everything. I couldn't be more pleased with how this turned out. Let me get back a little bit. This also is 40 count linen. There, we got all of her in the frame, I hope. Let me draw it up close for you. She's done. Spent a lot of time with her. So this is 40 count linen. Some of the called for floss threads, but as I said, mostly my own conversion. Some of them I used as called for. Some of them I used in different places. And so let's tell the story of Julia. First of all, I love knowing the history. Oh, me. Wow, right there is a good representation. I know you can't see the whole thing, but that's a good representation of the linen color. It's pretty dark, and it does not photograph well. It just doesn't. And I wish I knew the secret to photographing linen, because it always seems like you point a camera at linen and some of the individuality of it, some of the modeling, some of the vibrancy of it just flattens and almost goes away. And this is one of those linens. A lot of times oh, there's a good representation of it too. A lot of times I'll try and pull a DMC floss that's sort of like the color. I could never find a floss that looked like this. So I can't tell you what floss even matches this. So let me put her over here. I'm going to show you my threads, and we will talk in depth. So these are the threads. As I said, some of them called for, many of them additional, and the linen I used was a Mason linen. That is the called for linen, called 40 count button box, medium dark. Now the one I had was not that, but it was very like that. It was a gift to me from my friend Ray Niles, who has a sampler reproduction company called Red Barn Samplers. Ray gave me that. So I was really pleased to be able to stitch on the called for. The linen that came in the kit was this one right here. This is a needle and flax linen called Hemingway, I believe. I'm going to put these two together so you can see the difference. You can see Hemingway is different. Nothing wrong with Hemingway. But the reason I had the border all the way in on that, and I had lost interest in the sampler. Dangling thread decided to make its way. I had lost interest in it after I did that border. And after a little bit of soul searching, because it's a beautiful sampler, I decided, why are you not interested in this? And part of it was due to the way that I felt when I looked at this and looked at this. to me, I wasn't getting the same feeling of like deep interest, attraction, excitement. I wasn't feeling it when I was actually doing the stitching. So I had that piece of linen, as I said, that Ray gave me, and I knew that it was close to the called for. And I decided rather than totally give up on a beautiful sampler, I would give up on my start of the sampler. So I just threw it out one day, kind of like Brenda. Brenda in the Serial Starter sometimes does. I just threw it away and started over. And then as I started over, let's see, I started over in February. So I started at the end of September, started it over in February, towards the end of February. And I had realized that some of the called for colors also were not speaking to me. Again, no, I don't want this to come across as a criticism in any way to Kathleen and what she provided in the chart. I was just looking for something different than what I was getting from the combination of floss and linen. And as well, I had been able to find a photograph of the antique sampler online. And I found it at the actual auction site that probably sold it. And so when I saw that, they had high-res version of pictures that they had on the internet. And this is not a very high-res picture. And I just kind of, when I started stitching, I was looking at that high-res picture and I just somehow moved into making floss choices that were based on more on that high-res picture that I got off the internet than what the call for colors were on the chart. So with that said, I'm first of all going to pop a picture up of the website that I found the high-res picture on. So if you want to go see that, you can too. So here's that. And then what I ended up doing was as I was working on the stitching, I would pull the called for color. And then if I thought it looked like my high-res picture that I had on my phone, I could zoom in an area and I would honestly just lay the floss down right on my phone screen. If it looked like the color, I used it. If it didn't, I went to my stash. I've got extensive stash now. I mean, that's just the way I roll. I like to have options. And if you've been here before, you know my history is as a professional illustrator, commercial greeting card and other kind of commercial illustration. So having just the right color for things is important to me. So I've developed kind of a lot of a thread stash, not quite a full selection of DMC. I just like my options. And so what I would do would be look at the called for floss, which came with the kit from Quaker Sampler. If that worked, great, I used it. If it didn't seem to me like it looked like what I was seeing in the picture, then I went to my thread stash and I tried to find something that was closer, or what I thought was closer. Again, this is all based on my aesthetic, my interpretation. When I looked at the color, what was my eye seeing? So it was all based on my taste and what I wanted to do. So I want to then go through, because you've asked, my conversion for this. So again, if this gets dry, you can skip ahead to more fun stuff. But if you're interested in how this works, maybe you've thought about doing a thread conversion too, or you've wondered how you go about it, and some of this information might be helpful to you. So first of all, I'm going to flash this. I've got Kathleen's information on here. these are the called for flosses. This is copyrighted by Cross Stitch Antiques, Kathleen Littleton. So this is hers. When I was stitching, I had a photocopy of that. I made notes on it. So I made a lot of notes on it. I'm not asking you to try and interpret my notes. I went through each one and have written these down. So here we are. Here we are. That's not all of them. Here's this. Make sure you're seeing it. And then here are some other notes. And then I'm going to go through each one. So for the border, I used the two called for dark greens, which were English Ivy and Pine Needles. And then there was a lighter green that was called for. I did not use it. Instead, I used a color called Gentle Art Chives. So here are those colors. That's the border that I used. Flying threads. English Ivy, Pine Needles were Classic Colorworks. Chives is a Gentle Art. Now, I chose this particular skein. I went to a store and got it. I chose this particular skein because it had a little bit more yellow to it than some of the others. That outside border has some yellow to it, so that's why I chose that. And then the little kind of berries that are part of that border, the little kind of baubles, they have a red stripe in them. Mostly I used the called for color, which was Cherry Cobbler by Classic Colorworks. Some of them, however, I changed. When I was looking at that high-res picture, sometimes I was seeing what appeared to me to be a bit of a brighter red. And I think some of that probably had to do with floss degradation or thread degradation over the years. In some areas of the sampler, it was more intact than in others. There was probably light damage. So in some areas of the sampler, maybe it had faded more than others. So mostly I used Cherry Cobbler, but in some cases I used DMC 22. They are very close together, Cherry Cobbler and DMC 22, but I did alternate those. And it wasn't an alternation that I could say every other one or whatever. I was looking at the picture. Sometimes I used this if it appeared brighter to me, more intense. Sometimes I used that one. So that was that. There is a couple of different blues in this that and they can be seen up here in the butterfly and that little floral plant. I changed both of those. I changed the darker blue from, I think it was Blue Suede, Weeks Blue Suede, yep. I changed that to Classic Colorworks Wavy Navy. And then the lighter blue was something called Chesapeake Bay by Classic Colorworks. I did not use Chesapeake Bay at all. The skeins that I had a lot of gray in them. I just didn't feel like they looked like my picture. So I tea dyed some color and cotton. This one's called Trapeze. You can see that the, sorry about that, the tea dye here, which ends up looking pretty gray, but on the fabric, it looks blue. So that tea dyed color is in that butterfly. And by the way, while I'm showing you the butterfly, I hope I'm showing you the butterfly. Yeah. And that bird, there was a lot of thread loss in the original sampler in that area. The bird I chose to fill in, as well as some of the butterfly. So I also redesigned part of the wing of the butterfly. It was pretty kind of oddly shaped. And so I sorted that out to my eye so that it was more balanced. And then, as I said, I filled in where some floss loss was. So that's how I did that. And for the bird, even though I was filling in quite a bit of it, I did kind of use the called for colors in that. All except for the light blue. And for that I used the tea dyed, nope, coffee dyed. Tea and coffee do different things to your floss. One makes it more green, one adds just a little bit of a difference to it. So there's that. The pinks, oh, pinks and reds, look at all of them. I did some tea dyeing in those, coffee dyeing too. So as I said, I used called for cherry cobbler, added in 22 from DMC. I used the called for manor red where a dark red was called for. There was a Weeks Dye Works color called Queen Anne's Lace, which was, words, Jackie, Queen Anne's Lace, which was called for. I did not use that. That's where I used that DMC 950. And this is an old one, so it's a little more rosy. But I used that wherever the Queen Anne's Lace was called for. And in some cases where I needed a very light pink. Now there's a classic colorworks called for color called Blushing Beauty. I did not use that at all. Mostly where that was called for, that was another tea dyed one that I replaced with a color and cotton color called Princess. This is the original color of Princess. You can see it next to these other two. Different amounts of coffee, different amounts of time that it was left in the coffee. I experimented, so there's no way I could tell you how long do you leave it in the coffee. I dunked it, let it dry, looked at the picture. If it matched, I used it. If it didn't and it needed to be darker or browner, I dunked it again, let it dry, tested it against my picture. So there's, you know, some trial and error. And I had two of them because as I got to two different versions, I guess I should say. Because as I got to a different section of the sampler where the same color was called for, it was more brown. So I got my coffee out again. I had some instant coffee, so it's not hard. Throw a little salt in it to act as a mordant so it helps set the color a little bit. Rinse it after you've dunked it to get the excess off. And you've got some dyed floss. So that was the color I used for a lot of the pink. Another color I used in some places, you can see these are kind of similar. So I pulled a rose petal. This might even be called for something. I just use that as an alternative in areas. I just have it in my notes. So Classic Colorworks Rose Petal became another alternative for that pink. And then there's a darker pink called for, Tennessee Red Clay is the called for. I used it only a couple of times. I ended up replacing it with Gentle Arts Antique Rose. What I liked about Antique Rose was that my skein had some more peachy, there's some orangey in that. And that, when I looked at the picture, matched better. Copper Penny is a called for color, the orangey colors. This is what I used throughout. I did not change that. Another green that's called for in this is Piney Woods. I used that. You can see it's a very brownish green. It was perfect for where it was called for, in my opinion. Now, there are a lot of different browns in Julia. Shows up in, oh my gosh, the border a lot. I don't know what that girl was thinking when she did this, but the flowers that are facing the interior of the border are all framed in brown. The flowers pointing away from the interior design are all in pinks and reds. So that was some experimenting in tea dyeing and coffee dyeing, and just pulling little rings off of here. There is a kind of a pinky brown that's called for brown hen, I think. I did not use it. On my linen, the skein of brown hen that I had, it ghosted on that brown linen. It did not work. So I had a skein of Classic Colorworks Little House Brown. You can see it's also a pinky brown. I coffee dyed some, and that's what I used in place of brown hen. That color shows up in those flowers in the border, as I said, and sometimes when I would look at the picture, they seemed a little more pink than others. And I also used Classic Colorworks Cinnamon Toast. I have two skeins of it here. I don't know if you can see there. Here in real life, IRL, they're different. Coming across on screen, they're showing even pinker than they are. They're a little more of a, I don't know, pinky tan. But I used some Cinnamon Toast interspersed with the coffee dyed Little House Brown. Called for color was Brown Sugar. I did use that. However, you can see a lot of little floss ends. I fussy cut the heck out of this to get the color I wanted out of the skein where I wanted it. Again, based on how that antique sampler had hung on the wall, what its life was, you know, it's from 1849, so it's been around for a long time. There has been fading of the floss, degradation. That changed the way the color looked to me when I looked at my photograph. Sometimes it looked very vibrant, the use of this color, so I would pick out the brighter, more gold areas. Sometimes it looked more amber, deep amber, and then I would pick out the darker parts of the floss. So Brown Sugar, used that. In place of a color called Acorn, sometimes I used Weeks Chris's Bonbon. In a couple of spots, that color appeared very rusty red to me. Sometimes I used this one, Classic Colorworks Cayenne. In a couple of places, I used Weeks Hazelnut. And then gingerbread is a called for color. I used it in just a couple of spots. In the lilies that are in the corners, gingerbread is called for in the leaves. I did not use it. I used that chives color. So I didn't use the gingerbread in many places that it was called for. Again, that's because I was looking at a photograph on my phone, and everybody's phone shows color differently. I felt like that color should be more green, so it's more green in my version. Now there's a very dark, almost black in this, you know, down there in the flower sprays, in the leaves there in the center. There's black kind of outlining in the butterfly, in that sheep. The called for color on that was a Gentle Arts color called Brown Bear, which since Kathleen did the conversion, that color has actually shifted quite a bit. So she made a correction on that and had a DMC color pulled. I didn't use either one. I used a couple of different things. When I looked at my picture on my phone, sometimes that color appeared really deep, deep green to me. And sometimes it definitely appeared brown or even gray to me. So in my lilies, in some of the leaves, in plants in other areas, used Gentle Arts Raven. This is a called for color in a couple of places. So, and I probably used it where it was called for. But Raven has a green that runs through it. It's black, but green. And so I pulled out, I fussy cut a lot, the darker parts of it so that it would appear black where it needed to, but it also was green. Again, I'm going to show you. It's coming across pretty green on the screen. In real life, if you just look at it, it does look black. It has the same depth and value as the other areas. So most of the places you see black in mine are Raven. With that said, I can't say that they all are. That's why I hesitated to give you guys a color conversion, because I was looking at the picture, changing stuff. I also used Color and Cotton Peppercorn, which I have fussy cut all the darkest parts out of this. So this is pretty shaggy right now. And there were a couple of spots I even used Classic Colorworks Blackbird. Mostly, however, I used the Raven. I picked either some of the more green parts in the leaves or some of the blacker parts where I needed shading. In the cartouche for Julia's name, in the outlining on the butterfly, in particular in the cartouche, I used the darker parts of this Color and Cotton Peppercorn, because it's a brownie black. And there's some gray in here too, but it's a very warm black, and that's what I wanted for Julia. I also, there's some neutral colors here. I haven't gone over those with you, that show up in a, I mean, very light kind of creamy colors. The sheep, the cross, parts of the flowers. Weeks Dye Works Gold is a called for. I used that. Sometimes when I was looking at the picture, if that, where that color was called for, if it looked deeper to me, a couple of places I used Weeks Dye Works Schneckley. I also interspersed where that color looked more like creamy white to me. I used Color and Cotton Shortbread. Again, I fussy cut. I pulled out the color that I wanted because some of this is pretty yellow. Some of this is pretty yellow and I wanted some of the whiter bits, but Color and Cotton Shortbread. And then there were some areas that were a lighter color but appeared more dull to me. Had a little green, more dirt to it, dirtier area of the sampler. And for those, again, this is lighter areas. This is in some of the places in the border. Gentle Arts Sage. And then I had a hard time finding what I thought was the exact right color for that little lamb. I pulled out DMC 822, but it needed to be a little dirtier. And I also tea dyed a color DMC 928. These two, 928 I used not only in the lamb for some shading, but also in that lightest flower that's in the central motif. That was the 922 that 928 that I tea dyed. So I did a lot. You know, you guys, I wish I could say 1-to-1. I just changed one color to be another color. When you see this one color in the chart, use this. When you see this color, use that. I didn't do that. So I'm hoping, and I'm going to put some of this on my Instagram page too. I'm hoping that you'll get what you want from my explanation today and take some photographs, some close-ups so you can see. As I said, up in the butterfly and the bird, I filled in some areas, redesigned one of the butterfly's wings. There's a little bit of over one, that teeny weeny little bug. I don't know what Julia was thinking to do that all over one. For that, I used these two DMCs for the body, 3772 and 840. So they would show up on my linen. And then there's, I think Cherry Cobbler shows up in there. And the light blue and the darker, oh, there's some gold in there, Weeks Dye Works gold. Those were called for. And then the other bit of redesigning I did was I shifted the cartouche placement just a little bit. So her name was not sitting right on top of the lower flowers. And I added my initials and the date. And that was inspired by a Facebook friend of mine named Heidi, who did a similar thing on her version of Julia. There was just seemed like a natural space right there to add my name. So there we go. Julia Rachel De la Mare. One more time for you. And you'll see her again when I get her framed. She was a joy to stitch, a challenge to stitch. There was frogging that went on as I experimented with colors, as I changed some things around. I redesigned a little bit in this particular lily. Charted, it was just a mirror image, but when I was looking at the photograph, this one wasn't colored as a mirror image, so I just shifted some colors around to make that one more like the antique. So there she is. Julia Rachel De la Mare, 1849. A sampler from the Channel Islands of Guernsey. And let me pay tribute to Julia. She was born on December 16th, 1840 at Saint-Sauveur, Guernsey, Channel Island, to Pierre de la Mare, a farmer, and Rachel de Garris, both aged 30. In 1841, with Pierre's family, were also living his mother, Judith, who was 55 at the time, and her sisters, his sisters, I guess, another Judith, age 35, and Rachel, age 27. By 1851, Pierre was a freeholder farmer with 15 acres, employing 2 agricultural laborers, and had 5 daughters. Julia, the oldest, aged 10. This is in 1861. She was 10. Lydia, who was 8. Mary, age 6. Nelia, age 3. And Adelina, age 1. By 1861, the family also had a son, Peter, age 5. And Julia, who is now age 20, was no longer listed as living in the household in the census records. Perhaps she was off working elsewhere. By the 1871 census, Julia is again listed in the household, and she was 37 then. She lived on the family farm from thence forward. She was a farmer's daughter and never married. She died on January 3rd, 1912, at the age of 71, and is buried at Saint-Sauveur Parish, Guernsey. Guernsey is the second largest island in the Channel Islands, which is located 27 miles west of Normandy. So, Julia Rachel De la Mare. This is now available as of earlier in the month, I think August 1st. It was available to everybody, no longer exclusive. So I hope you all have her. If you haven't, I know a lot of people have already finished this sampler. I've been seeing a lot of beautiful, beautiful finishes and even framed versions of it showing up on Facebook and Instagram. It's wonderful to see everybody's versions of it. I know some people are still in the contemplation stage. What color am I of linen am I gonna stitch this on? Some of you have been, patiently waiting for me to share my conversion. Hiccups. So I hope this information from me today has been helpful for you as you prepare and begin your journey of stitching Julia. I want to thank all of you for your support as I was working on this, for your interest in the conversion. And I know what I did is not going to be to convert this, and the level of detail I went to make it look like my interpretation of the antique. I know that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but if you even want to try part of what I did, I hope that it has been helpful for you to get a start on. And maybe if you've never done a conversion before or never thought about coffee or tea dyeing thread before, maybe this will encourage you to experiment with that. What have you got to lose? I did not ever coffee or tea dye a whole skein. I just picked out 3 or 4 threads. That's all you're going to need of some of them. The pink, when you tea dye that, and the Little House brown, that rosy brown, you're going to use the most of those tea dyed, but even at that, it's just about 1/2 to 2/3 of a skein. So I hope this might encourage you to just experiment with your stitching a little bit. Get brave. Try something new. Do something different. Stitch a beautiful sampler. And if you want to stitch it as called for, oh my gosh, I don't want anybody to ever think there's anything wrong with that. It's just that I went on a different journey with Julia, which brings me to something else I wanted to talk about, is because when you finish a sampler, at least me, this is the third sampler that I have finished since I've come back to fourth, because I've got a, right over my shoulder that way, I've got a red sampler there that I have finished. But you spend so much time with them, I develop a relationship with them. I'm putting a lot of myself into what I'm doing. It's over a period of months and sometimes years that you're working on something. You change as you're working on them. And the sampler, the stitching might change as you're working on these things too. And so by the time it comes to its conclusion, you've developed a connection to this piece of stitching and the person who created the original sampler, that it's kind of hard to let go of. And my friend Renee said that it's kind of like when you finish a really great novel. You've been so invested in the characters and the personalities that when the novel is concluded, you're going to miss these personalities and these characters and the story that you have invested yourself in. So that's how I feel about all of the samplers that I've stitched so far. And, if you've been here before, if you've watched even a handful of my videos, you've seen some of the other things that I've stitched. The very first one I did was a adaptation of a heartstring sampler. It's right on the wall over there, so that's why I looked over there, called Consider the Lilies. And I really redesigned that to become about my mother's family and about the prairie, because I grew up in Northwest Illinois. I live in Missouri, so I've always lived in states that have historically been a natural prairie. And in the case of where I live now, I'm on the edge of what is still the tallgrass prairie. So the prairie has been important to me. So I just used that as my inspiration. So that became, something really unique and individual to me. Some of you saw me and the journey I went on when I stitched a sampler called Bridget Power 1840. And at the beginning of these projects, and I'll bring in Julia now too, I had no idea when I selected those projects to start what sort of a journey I would go on in the stitching of them. Particularly Bridget, you guys who have been following her for a while know that that didn't end up anywhere that it began. And I just went where the stitching was taking me, where my inspiration and intuition was taking me, what I started feeling like I wanted to put into it and get out of it. I'm a person who is pretty introspective, and I like to reflect on the projects that I do, or the relationships that I have, the encounters that I have with people that impact me. It's like, wow, what was that about? What did I learn from that? How, in this case, how did I grow as a stitcher and an artist? And so in the case of Julia, I learned just at its most basic, the kind of samplers that I'm attracted to are pretty detailed. I like things that have, I've realized, a lot of motifs. Again, I'm just looking at samplers. I wish you could see them. It's right over there. Julia is right here. Bridget is on the wall in my bedroom. But I like samplers, I've realized, that have a lot going on them. The Shakespeare's Peddler one, it has a lot going on too, but it has areas of space, so it's slightly different. I learned, because this is the first time I've ever started something and restarted it, I've learned it's okay to do that. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, take some time, if necessary, to find out why. If you want to abandon something completely, it's okay to do that. I actually learned that too through this process. Obviously, I didn't abandon Julia, but I had another project that I really wasn't enjoying. So I've just stopped stitching it. Ended up cutting off the part that I had stitched. I threw it away. I did. I think Brenda does that, so I'll just blame that on Brenda. Anyway, but I learned that it's really okay to start something. If you're not getting joy out of your stitching, why keep doing it? So that's what I learned. How did I grow? I thought about that. Well, I've never done a sampler like the Julia sampler before. That one, the motifs are based on a style of motifs called Berlin woolwork that are very detailed and kind of realistic looking. I mean, there is a lot going on, like in that central floral motif. Holy smoke, there's a lot of color changes. That was a lot of color changes. I don't think I'd ever be a full coverage person based on my experience here. That's kind of, you know, just in the area, that's full coverage. I had to get okay with the back of my sampler being a little bit messy. Somebody asked, can I see the back? Now, some of you might look at this and say, messy? That's not messy. Well, there's a lot of carried threads. You know, it's kind of thick in some areas because of the amount of thread in it. They're just all over the place. But I really enjoyed the Berlin woolwork and the kind of realism of the play on light and shadow and medium tones to get something that looks a little more realistic, like the flowers, for instance. I enjoyed that. I think I do want to do another sampler that's maybe inspired by Berlin woolwork. I became a little more confident in my stitching. I know I have a friend who says, oh my gosh, Jackie, your stitching is just beautiful. How do you do that? Well, I don't necessarily think it's all that, but when you spend hours and hours and hours doing something, your skill is going to become more and more refined. There's over one in this one again. Prior to this, the only over one stitching, one over one linen thread over, one floss thread over one linen thread. Prior to this, I'd only ever done that in one other sampler. That was in Bridget Power. So I got to, you know, a little more practice with that here. And the other thing I found out is I'm really not too fond of stitching on a deadline. So, and by that I mean, I spent, in order to get this done to show you guys today, there were 3 or 4 nights over the past week and a half that I was up late working on this. Late for me, like I usually like to be done with my stitching by 9:30, 10 o'clock. I was up later than that to get this done because I wanted to show it to you finished today. And I'm just not a late night stitcher. I feel like I made some mistakes that I ended up having to then take out. But even though I got it done, in a way, I felt like some of my personal enjoyment of the process of the stitching, which if you've been here for any length of time, you know I love. I feel like some of that process that I wasn't able to get as much out of it because I was so focused on, I've got to get this done. So I did it, and I'm glad I had that experience so that I know that I wouldn't enjoy that experience again unless I absolutely positively had to for a particular reason. I would be more discerning if that were the case. Like if somebody said, I want you to stitch this thing, you need to have it done next week, I would have to, you know, think twice about that. So I learned that about myself. So our stitching is really a personal expression of ourselves. And the things that I choose to do, I'm really coming to see that truly is the case. And if I'm going to spend the amount of hours on these things that I do and that you do, you want it to be something that is really giving you something back that you're going to want to have on your wall, or want to have made into a finish, or want to give to a friend. Make it your own. If it's worth the investment for you to make it mean something for you. So thank you for letting me talk about all of that. I hope you got something out of that. So let me put her back up here one moment. Now that I've got her all ironed, I don't want to get wrinkles back into it. So now, moving on, that's the end of my stitching and my making. So I'm going to move into, checking my notes, some gifts and Stitchy Kindness. So I had one of you guys reach out to me. My email address, by the way, is always in the description box below. And if you have any questions, want to reach out to me, you can email me, or you can send me a personal message through Instagram. Anyway, I had somebody reach out to me saying they had something they wanted to send me. Would I be comfortable giving them my snail mail address? And I did, and she sent me an amazing gift that I want to share. This is from Donna, and she sent me this great card with the little quilted Scotty on it, and sent me a lovely note. Thank you. I love hearing from you guys. I just do. Knowing what you're working on, what I'm talking about that means something, matters. It's amazing. Anyway, Donna, thank you for that. But Donna sent me a chart from Hands Across the Sea that she thought of me when she saw it. And it was this one right here. It's called The Alexanders of Lintrathen, 1829. It's a Scottish sampler. She heard me talking in one of my videos about wanting to do a Scottish sampler, and she said she thought of me. It's because it's so colorful. It is. I love it. I know I have seen this one before. In fact, in looking at this lady here with the striped dress, I'm hoping that the glare's not too awful. I think I saw Brenda and Laura working on that once. Anyway, that looks like a lot of fun to do. So that's going to go in. I have a project bag that has Highland cows on it. I already have one sampler in there, but I'm going to put this in there too. So that's going to be my Scottish sampler bag. And with that, she also sent me this nice Hands Across the Sea card that has a little free chart on the back. So thank you, Donna, for that. Totally unnecessary. Thank you. And then I received some really nice things at the Stitch With Me Day that I want to share with you. Some of which because I think you really appreciate a couple of these in particular, but it could give you ideas for table gifts for retreats that you might go to. This one was a gift from my friend Renee, who is on Instagram as Prairie Stitcher 515. Look at this amazing strawberry that she made. Yep, that's Archie on there. And she kept laughing because of how enormous this strawberry is. It's a good sized one. It's about 4 or 5 inches big and heavy. She packed it full, but look at that. Oh my gosh. Archie, I love it. I haven't had a lot of strawberries up until now, so I get the start of a bowl with strawberries. So thank you for that, Renee. And then I got another strawberry. I want to show you this beautiful box first. Now, I do not require gifts for those Stitchy days. Just saying, if you end up coming to one in the future, you're not required to give me a gift. It's just wonderful that some of you do. But this beautiful box that does have a gift inside. So I had no idea that Joy Bartlett, who is the finisher for Brenda, Brenda and the Cereal Starter, lives in Kansas City, is a fan of my channel. Hi, Joy. She's been to 2 of my Stitchy days. I'm so grateful that she comes. She brought me, look, another strawberry. This one is velvet. Little fuzz. She told me, oh, it is there, that she put a pearl, there was a pearl up pin in there. And then in this box, also, it has a bit of antique lace in here that is beautiful. And she listens to me, obviously. And look at this beaded pansy. I hope you can see that. Beaded vintage pansy with a cross hanging from it. I love that. Oh my gosh. That is going to go in my Stitchy box now that I have shared it. I love that. So that's from Joy. And then would somebody give me some of their favorite lotion? It's an Avon one, I think she said. Yep, Avon Moisture Therapy. And as we're getting now into the drier air, that's going to come in very handy. This is a cool tin that my friend Lynn, who actually lives right here in town, gave me. It's a metal tin that would be good as a container for things, or put some Stitchy stuff in there. That's fun, like all those old travel stickers almost. Got this really cute little stitched initial J in one of those wooden hoops. And then this also came with a couple of complementary colored, get that turned around, counting pins. Thank you. Oh, with Renee's package, she also gave me some of tags, thread drops. Those like labels that you might want to put on either your work or your project bag. And then she knows I love colonial petite needles. She found a little package of those. So even that right there, just those 3 things, would be a great table gift for somebody. And then she also had this card that had some of that crinkle ribbon that I put on the top of my wool strawberries. It's always nice to have some of that. To collect it in different colors, I realized as I was making my strawberries, I needed like 2 or 3 different colors before I found the right one. I had to order those all online. I also got from Jane, who is, or Susan, Susan X Stitches from Spring Green. She was here with her mom, Jane, who lives over in Topeka. They brought me a skein of Gloriana hand-dyed floss. This is Italian gold. And then this really cute needle minder, if you can see that. And this is, she said this is like the best needle minder you can, money can buy. Susan loves these. It's from a company called Puffin and Art, Puffin by Art and Soul Works. There's not a puffin on there, but I do love me a puffin. But it's kind of this cute metal little house ABC. Kind of looks like a sampler. So that's Jane and Susan. Thank you. This will find its way into my Beatrix Potter sampler when I pick that back up. And then lastly, I want to show you these really adorable wooden thread bobbins that I was given. You guys, look at these. Scotty's. These were a gift. I think she gave these to everybody who was there. My friend Ina, who is on Instagram as Lois Hills Needleworks. She said she found these on Etsy. Here's a couple of them without the floss on them. And then she just chose DMC colors that were the colors of Archie. And she just gave these to me so I would have them. So yeah, they're going in my Stitchy box too. But I just love that. There were, and I looked a little bit on Etsy. There are other dogs you can get. They're just laser cut wood. And she said they're not terribly expensive. So aren't those fun? Just so thoughtful. Everyone, so thoughtful. I loved that. Somebody brought, you know, candy and put it on the tables, so we all had snacks. Of course, Gretchen and Fred gave us plenty of snacks there. That's my Stitchy Kindness, plus all that DMC 950 that you guys sent. That is definitely Stitchy Kindness. And then I got one bit of haul that I want to show you. First, I want to show you the box because it's beautiful. I've told you before about my friend Marie, who is from Wales. She has a linen dyeing company called Swan Bay Fabrics, and she sends her fabrics. Put my hand over my... And it was in a plastic envelope, but when you open it, the box, it's almost Tiffany blue, was sealed shut with these great stickers that are stitched swan. And I ordered some linen from Marie because, as many of you know, in America we're being affected now, because everybody else is, by new tariffs that are being imposed. And a lot of people are having to figure out new ways of shipping, new regulations for shipping. For a while there, I think it's getting a little bit sorted out. I know Nicola Parkman has talked about it a lot, getting things sorted out. And so Marie has said hers is being sorted too. Some people right now, while they're still navigating through the quagmire of the rules, are choosing not to ship to the United States. I totally understand. We got to figure it out. People are scrambling to do that. But anyway, I put an order in with Marie so I could get it before all of that went into place. So I want to tell you, or show you, when you open a box from Marie, each of your linens is wrapped and has a sticker on it. I got some 46 count. She had sent me some samples of her linen before that was all in 40 count. And I'm now preferring to, and I enjoy also stitching on 46, so I contacted her to get some 46. So I've got 3 pieces of 46 count and one little snippet of 40. So I got this one, which is called Mary's Sampler. It is kind of a goldy color, a buttery yellow. Let me see if I can get it. I didn't pull DMC floss. It's a little darker than it's showing on screen. If any of you have a color by Tabby Cat Linen called Just the Ticket, this is very reminiscent of that. So this is 46 count. I also got that same color because I love it so much. I was working on a Barbara Anna design on that. I also got a little 1/8 yard of 40 count in that same color. And I got a little 1/8 yard of 46 count in a color called Light Sanditon. Again, it's a little darker than what it's showing on screen. It's a light neutral, but it's a little more tan than some, not creamy. It's definite tan. That's Light Sanditon. And Marie names her linens all based on Jane Austen novels. So light Sanditon. And then I got another fat quarter of a color she calls dark Sanditon. So here was the light, and here's the dark. Again, a little bit darker. That's actually pretty close right there to what it is. Did you guys see the PBS show Sanditon? It was an unfinished novel, and they had a, PBS did a adaptation of it and filled out this story. So Sanditon, I will always think of that when I work with that fabric, and I'm looking forward to finding something to stitch on that. In fact, I might know something. Anyway, so those were Swan Bay Fabrics. They're beautiful, beautiful linens. And she's not charging an arm and a leg. She's taking care of some of the tariffs on her end, and will work with you. Marie has hers sorted out. So if you've been interested in trying some of her linen, I would recommend it. You definitely want to continue to support these small businesses who are being impacted by the tariffs. I feel for you guys. Oh my gosh. You know, everybody's being impacted by that. And we're just doing the best we can. Interesting times we're going through, right? I'm just looking around. I just have a couple more things that I got that I want to show you. Not necessarily haul related, but sort of purchases I made. Don't we all love our stitching notions and stuff? A lot of us do anyway. Vintage stuff. I have had over my years a collection of these sewing boxes that have the glass beads and rings and a sort of Asian flair to them. I couldn't pass this one up. I saw it on eBay. It is in phenomenal condition. So I got that. But not only is it in phenomenal condition, it had stuff in it. So these are the fun things when you see them at flea markets and stuff to go through. There is some trim, some buttons, some vintage needles, snaps. There's even a few spools of actual silk floss in this. Faded, not faded. Isn't that amazing how that color, pink, faded to be this peach? There was this spool, no, not a spool, ball of, I guess this is a sort of like pearl cotton weight, gorgeous color. There was a little tiny crochet hook in here, a spool of linen thread, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, I loved that. Sort through that some more. I've taken out some stuff already because some of it was just either falling apart or disintegrating. So I took that out. And then I wanted to tell you too, I got a candle here. Like, what are you recommending candles for? So I mentioned to you at my last Stitch With Me that I did prior to the one I had last weekend. I had a friend of mine make votive candles for me. And I went to her studio and I selected a couple of scents and she poured them for us specifically. One I named Heirloom and the other one I named Angel Wings. She let me name them. But I told her that I need that scent, Heirloom, back in my life. I had one left. I burned it this week and I reached out to her and I said, Marcia, I need that scent back in my life. And she directed me to she said, I can make them for you, Jackie, but let me tell you about this guy who's using that same oil to make a candle. He calls it calligraphy. His company name is called Lit Brit Candle Company. He's a British guy that lives now in the United States. He lives in Oregon. Portland, I think. Anyway, it's an amazing candle. This jar weighs a ton, but it's that smell. So if any of you were there for the Heirloom candle, this is it. Lit Brit Candle Company. It is a little bit spicy. It's a little bit woodsy. It's a little bit dusty. I was trying to come up with a scent when I named it Heirloom. I wanted something that reminded me of samplers, of our stitching. And when I smelled this smell, that's what it reminded me of, like opening up a trunk. And what are the smells you smell? I know sometimes it's dust and must. This isn't that. It's amazing. It reminds me of a place that I've been before that I can't quite recall. So anyway, Lit Brit Candle Company. Let me put his information up here for you if you're interested. Just the jar alone was worth the price of the candle. It's really heavy glass, but I like to create a environment when I stitch. Scent is part of it. So that's why I wanted to tell you about that. So that one is called Calligraphy if you're wanting to give it a try. That's the same as a candle that I named Heirloom at our Stitch Day. So I'm looking around. I think I've told you about everything I wanted to tell you about. Oh, with the exception of a couple of things. I want to refer you to a video on Karen Combs Studio channel. She did a museum tour of the Tennessee State Museum. They have a sampler exhibit that goes along in conjunction with a book that recently came out about Tennessee samplers. I don't have the book yet. It's like an encyclopedia. It's a really thick book. But there's an exhibit at the Tennessee State Museum that goes along with that book. And Karen did YouTube, a FlossTube extra, where she took us into the museum to look at the samplers. Highly, highly recommend if you're watching that, if you're interested in samplers. I will link Karen's video below. It's her episode from October 21st, 2025 about the Tennessee State Museum. There are a couple of Instagram creators I wanted to tell you about, just because I know there are some people who just really get down on social media in general. Instagram for Stitchers, don't get down on it. There's a lot of inspiration there. And yeah, I know you have to wade through some ads, and sometimes you get suggestions of accounts to look at that are just not anything that you want. Instead of getting mad, just block that, get rid of it, scroll on by it, look for the stuff that's going to uplift you and inspire you. But as far as the inspiration goes, I want to tell you about one person in particular, a gal named Elizabeth Markevitch. And she has, I don't know if it's a daily, but nearly daily, she gives posts little reels or stories that are kind of creative fuel and reflection, prompts to reflect on what living a creative life could be for you, and how important it is to make things, and how therapeutic it is to make things. And you know, I'm all about that. So Elizabeth Markevitch, I'm going to run her name here. And then lastly, before I end, I'll tell you about another one, and then I'm going to read something from him. And that is a guy named Jonathan Edward Durham. And his Instagram handle is called This One Over Here. This One Over Here. He has kind of musings and thoughts. I was trying to figure out a way to describe him because he doesn't have much on his page. So it's kind of musings and thoughts and observations, and some uplifting silliness is what I came up with. Just to get you, some days that's what you need, some uplifting silliness, especially right now. Again, things are hard. I don't need to tell you. We've all read the headlines. Things are hard. So moments of joy, beauty in your stitching, uplifting silliness. So I want to give you a quote by him, and then we'll close. I don't think, he wrote it. It's not necessarily a quote. It was just something that came across my Instagram feed one day that might make you smile. Be a Mr. Rogers. Wear comfy shoes. Celebrate kindness. Sew affirmations. Save time for make-believe. Sing silly little songs. Be a tireless champion for the things you feel are important, no matter who disagrees with you. Feed fish or puppies, cats. Feed your pets. Smile at that. And sweaters, sweaters, sweaters. Yeah, that was from Jonathan Edward Durham. So I'm going to conclude now. I hope you'll stick around and watch the slideshow and a little bit of videos that I took from our Stitch With Me Day at Florilegium last week. I wish every one of you could come. It would be awesome. I don't know where we'd ever put every one of you, but I would love it if you were there. And maybe someday, because as long as people want to still come, I'll keep doing these. And Gretchen and Fred love them too. They get a lot of joy out of seeing all of us in there enjoying each other. So it's a mutually wonderful relationship. So anyway, with that said, I hope you enjoy your stitching. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Namaste, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.